Again, this is just my opinion. These are my experiences. This is what my experience in the Southern California scene since 1999 has taught me, is that a lot of the ways that dancers express themselves, I mentioned earlier, were kind of abstract in themselves. We didn't have the hardcore focus on foundation back then that we do today. Mind you, a lot of dancers were, foundation based, and nobody had forgotten about the elements of that foundation. But the battle aspect was a little bit more move for move, pound for pound, burn for burn. And, if you really want to, get technical, that can be considered abstract. That can be considered unorthodox because you're skipping a lot of those parts that people consider foundation.
Salute to the subscribers, those that live beyond the Cypher. I am your host, Illskillz. This is Beyond the Cypher, the podcast that shows the humanity and the superhuman. If you're new to the channel, please consider hitting the like and subscribe buttons. They cost you nothing. Today, for episode 17, Picture of You, we have another Cali hitter, straight knucklehead, husband, father, actor, and the biggest Rocky fan in the state of California, Mike the Cure. What up, Mike? How you doing?
Doing great, man. Just excited
Great.
to be on the show. So let's dig into some topics here, huh?
No doubt, man. We got a lot to talk about. And usually I start with, how did you get into hip hop or how did you get into breaking? But I have something that I was told that I would like to verify with you first. I was told, he's like, uh-oh, here we go. But no, I was told that you are actually the first Cali b-boy of the abstract movement. Not the first abstract dancer, but the abstract movement. Now, when I think of the abstract movement, I think of when the dress code came in, kind of like the rocker style, so on and so forth. So would you agree with that, or would you say, nah, it wasn't me, it was such and such?
Long story short, I think sure. There's it's a multifaceted topic. There's a lot that goes into it. Obviously, I come from a humble perspective where, I was inspired by a lot of things that were presented before me. And I wouldn't call myself the originator. I wouldn't say any sole person originated that movement or persona per se, because there's a lot of contributing factors to it. In regards to the abstract b-boy presentation in the scene, I think for Southern California in particular, because that's where I'm from and that's what I can kind of speak for, I would pretty much relegate it to myself and Nomak from Sour Patch, who wasn't Sour Patch at the time, but he was slick on the monkey bars. And in particular, it was an event thrown by Utmost of Battle Monkeys, and he threw an event called Unsigned Hype. And that event served as the catalyst for all of the up-and-coming crews in the Southern California scene to basically express themselves on a platform that was recognized as a whole. So that event in particular was where I would say the abstract movement was, for lack of a better term, it was birthed there at that event in particular. So I can't claim full credit, but I was there for it, at its conception.
Word. And just to clarify, it was actually a member of Slick that told me that.
Oh, word. Well, I'm sure he was there for that too. So
No doubt.
He's probably a good source.
No doubt. Now I guess we can get into the traditional intro. How, Mike, did you get into hip hop and breaking?
Well, growing up, I'm an 80s baby, so I was raised a little bit less on cartoons, a little bit more on 80s pop culture. So I grew up watching, a lot of, karate with Bruce Lee, Van Damme, Rocky. I kind of became more cognizant of it when Rocky 3 was out. So Eye of the Tiger, Mr. T, that was really a prime inspiration for me in terms of just pop culture in a sense. And so I became really fascinated with the world of film and cinema. And so I had, didn't really get an idea of what dance was until probably late 90s. In 97, I'm actually originally from Arizona. And
Oh wow, I did not know that.
yeah, so I started dancing out in Arizona. And basically in 7th grade, my friends and I, we caught wind of a breaking video, which everyone will probably know, Battle of the Year. And 1996 was the video. And mind you, this, you know, in the age of VHS, you know, nothing was a master copy. So, you know, it was probably like a 5th or 6th generation where you had to constantly, you know, play with a fickle tracking system, right?
Right,
so
right,
you
right.
never had a clear picture. So I was just fascinated with it. I saw it, and it just blossomed into this beautiful flower of ideas and inspiring concepts. And it was me, maybe about 5 other guys in 7th grade, and we just passed the video around, constantly mimicking and biting all these moves we would see in the video. And you know, and then, you know, come time for the Sadie Hawkins dance, or come time for the you know, grade school dances, was our time to shine, right? And we'd actually, you know, go out there and dance, and we didn't know what we were doing, you know, but it felt good, and it was something different, you know, and it belonged to us because I was never great at sports. You know, I wasn't really, you know, a mathlete. Like, I was never really, you know, big on those things. And so this was something that came along that felt like it belonged to me, and it felt like I belonged to it. And at that point, it was near the end of my time in Arizona, and I had moved to California. And when I moved to California in my freshman year, I had just started, so I didn't know anybody. And I had joined band, and then, you know, going to and fro classes, in the quads, I saw a bunch of dancers, you know, a bunch of b-boys, and it was just like, wow, okay, this is a sign. So it was a different time then. So getting acquainted was a lot more difficult because nobody wanted to teach you anything. You know, it was a much more close to the chest, guarded art form. And, you know, I would go up and try to talk to some of the guys. No, man, I ain't here to teach. And I'm just like, whoa, like, I'm just trying to make friends, you know, like, I didn't know anybody. And so I really had to, like, bust my back just to kind of get in with these guys. And even at that point, I still wasn't fully in. So, you know, I really grinded for a while. It took me 2 years to learn windmills. I didn't have a workshop. I didn't have these videos that you see on YouTube. It was a different world. And at that point, once I started breaking more in high school and discovering more of the scene, it all changed when AOL Instant Messenger became a big part of communications, right? How many kids watching this video is going to know what I'm talking about when I say AIM?
AIM was the center of your social life.
Instant Messenger was cool. It was really convenient and it was quick. How it played a role in my life was completely just to talk to my friends and boys that I was interested in high school.
If I really liked a girl and I was sitting at home on AIM and that door opened and it was her, there was nothing. It was like she walked into your room. There was nothing more exciting.
It was sort of like the pre-Facebook, Instagram, social media addiction.
It's like you're loved, you're popular. Someone cares about you even though you had headgear.
But when you're 16, it's the most important thing in your life.
Right.
Right.
So once I got onto that platform of communications, I met Cross One, and then everything was just downhill from there. You know, it's a long story, but that's kind of where it began.
No doubt. And, you know, I hate to drive this home every time somebody drops a jewel about the VHS era. But, you know, here at Beyond the Cypher, we're trying to not only just let people tell their stories, but each story becomes almost part of a breaking encyclopedia, right? So,
Absolutely.
you know, 50 years from now, I want, you know, the new B-boys, because if you're 30 and under now, you don't understand the pricelessness of having the VHSs, right? You don't understand the concept of like at least one member in your crew who can never have the VHSs because you ain't getting it back, right? Like everybody else gets to watch the VHS, you got to come over and watch the VHS because if we let you borrow it, the VHS is gone. You know what I'm saying? So like that's really an important era and almost like evolution of breaking when things were so nomadic. You know what I'm saying? And then us in that era compared to the people before us, they think we have it easy because we have VHSs. You know what I'm saying? They're like, well, you had something to watch. We had to show up and find the people. You know what I'm saying? So I always like to pause on that. And
to just piggyback off of what you're saying, it's that's like a whole podcast on its own. You know, if you really talk about the pros and the cons and the ups and downs, and just to kind of drive it a little bit more home, it's a double-edged sword. You know, it definitely, for those who were involved in that era where that was our primary source or resource, like I wouldn't trade it for the world, because it means we came from a much more challenging stomping ground. Whereas now everything is so accessible that you kind of lose that mystique and you lose that aspect of never quite knowing what is next. And so you're always looking forward to, you know, whatever's on the plate that's coming your way. And so that's amazing. But even looking at it now, the kids that have it now, it's great because the exposure is there. There's way more opportunities. There's way more respect for what we do because people see it now. You know, obviously, I don't think we're at a point where it's fully understood and fully respected, but I feel like we're getting. So yeah, I mean, it's got its pros and it's got its cons. If I'm looking at it from a selfish perspective, I much prefer that era. But if I'm looking at it as a contributing person to the hip hop scene, I think where we're at is a great direction to go. So
no doubt. Okay. And so I'm looking online and I'm seeing some things, and I find old pictures of Mike the Cure. Old pictures of Mike the Cure, like definitely young high school age Mike the Cure. And my question is, how do we go from Mike, you know, to Mike the Cure? Because I saw like regular hats, Adidas suits, like things that anybody who comes into contact with you years later would be like, what? Mike never owned an Adidas suit. You crazy? It's been, oh, by the way, you know, not to toot my own horn, but I knew not to do a Mike the Cure interview in anything but a black T-shirt. By the way, just to throw that out there. But so how do you transition from that kid that we see in the beginning of breaking to the Mike the Cure that people more know you for, like from an outsider's perspective looking in, the rocker Mike the Cure?
Yeah. You know, it's pretty easy. I think anybody who comes into a scene, they don't ever come in with their own voice, right? You're fresh, you're new, you're an amateur per se to that particular scene or community. And so when I first was exposed to dancing, I only knew what Battle of the Year 96 was telling me. You know, we didn't have the internet, and we didn't have, especially in Arizona, we didn't have this, you know, knowledge. Mind you, I'm a 7th grader, so I have no idea what fashion is. I have no idea what my voice is at this point.
Right.
So I'm more or less mimicking what I see in these videos. And in these videos, you know, you got cats like Wedding B-Boys, you got Enemy Squad, Funky Gross and Griff, and these crews, you know, obviously are kind of centering their fashion and their style around Adidas and Puma and all these tracksuits and things like that. So
It all started back at the beginning of the 20th century, and the Dosla family have just welcomed the last 2 children into their brood. The brothers were seemingly born into their destiny, as their quiet town of Herzogenaurach's main industry was shoemaking. While young Audi was pushed into a baking apprenticeship by his father before he was even a teenager, he was truly passionate about all things sports and how to improve one's athletic performance. But before he could really create a career for himself, Audi was drafted into the war in 1918. He would join Rudy and their older brother Fritz, who had been fighting since the war began. Upon his return in 1919, Audi quickly began formulating a new athletic shoe business. He'd build shoes out of whatever materials he could find, and even created his own bike-powered leather milling machine to use without electricity. Sports clubs in the area would receive samples of the shoes Audi was designing. The coaches and athletes could test them out for themselves, and the orders began rolling in. Rudy joined in on the fun in 1923, and on July 1st, 1924, the pair officially registered their company as Gebrüder Dosler Schuhfabrik, or Dosler Brothers Shoe Manufacturers. Together, they made a killer team. Audi, the quiet brother, was the mastermind behind the shoes, constantly tinkering and redesigning to make each shoe better and better, while Rudy was outspoken and charming, a born salesman with a mind for business. And so the duo embarked on their dream and began producing 50 pairs of athletic shoes a day to be used for soccer and track. And by 1928, they found their shoes at their first Olympic Games, where runner Lina Rodke not only won the gold for 800 meters in Amsterdam, but broke a world record while wearing Gebrüder Dosler shoes. The following year, the brothers registered their first patents. But just 4 years later, the world would change forever. In January 1933, Adolf Hitler became the Chancellor of Germany, and on May 1st of that same year, Audi, Rudy, and their older brother Fritz all joined the Nazi Party. Unbeknownst to the brothers, this single act would eventually lead to the end of their partnership and brotherhood.
In that time, I had to have a tracksuit because that was my way of saying I'm a b-boy, right? But it's a long journey. So throughout that journey, you start to discover your voice. You start to incorporate, well, this is my personality, and I'm going to do things this way because this is what I'm capable of. And so the way I danced, like, I was never able physically to do the traditional movements of the dance. It's just the way my body was created. I was only able to do things the way I could physically do things. Otherwise, I'm not going to just run headfirst into a wall and just be non-productive in that sense. So, I was always breaking non-traditionally. I would learn a few things from a traditional foundational aspect, but I was always kind of veering towards the unorthodox, thinking outside the box concepts. And so as time progressed and I moved to California, it became more the style of the people I was hanging around with and the people I was dancing with. It was a untucked dress shirt with Dickies khaki pants or something like that. Kind of like, and then the Velcro shoes, the old man look, and, a cardigan or whatever. And so that was my transition from 97 to California, moving into California, as it transitioned into that. So I wasn't wearing tracksuits. I wasn't wearing, Nike shoes and things like that. If you saw me walking down the street, it looked like a Benjamin Button, right? Like I was just some old man at the age of like 15, right? And then at that point, the movement started to change. Once I got involved in the breaking scene, in 99 to about 2001, the scene kind of, because of Utmost, like I said, there's a lot of contributing factors here. Because of Utmost from Battle Monkeys, his events, they opened the doors for a non-traditional approach to the dance. And so you had a lot more people just kind of taking chances and incorporating that risk factor, not just dancing wise, but persona wise. People weren't getting all geared up to go to jams all the time. People were wearing whatever they wanted to wear. Knuckleheads, California and Las Vegas changed fashion in a particular sense as well, because it became about the tank top shirts with some kind of athletic pants, And, clothes were a little bit tighter. So it gave a little bit more of a formed feel. So things started to change in that aspect. As I started to explore more of what my interests were, mind you, I'm an 80s baby. So I became a little bit more interested in exploring 1970s and 1980s music. So classic rock was big. New wave was huge for me. So I listened to a lot of The Cure. I listened to a lot of Depeche Mode. I listened to a lot of Led Zeppelin. A lot of songs and classics that I feel really is where music nowadays kind of pulls from. But because I was listening a lot more to that, it started influencing how I looked. And so I would wear, the New York Dolls shirts. I would wear, Robert Smith shirts and things like that. And because I was listening to The Cure so much, and at this point, my relationship with Knuckleheads was becoming more solidified, some of the guys in the crew would start to call me Cure. If I'm going to throw down a round, it's like, get 'em Cure, because I was so into that. And so it stuck. And I started to become the Mike the Cure persona. And of course, with that, I started to adopt the more Robert Smith look to my presentation. So because of my interest in film as well, breaking and dance started to become more of a theatrical performance to me. I started looking at more than just the, going out there, doing some top rock, hitting the floor, getting up and blah, blah, blah. It became more about the story. It became more about the what am I trying to say in my movement? I started to dig deeper, and I started to think a lot deeper. It was never just a surface value window shopping kind of feel for me. Like I lived it. That's what I guess you can say separates my presentation from many others that are out there. So it started to mold into this, and then as the years progressed, 2002 hit, and that's when Mike the Cure was more or less born for what you would know it as looking like. And that was, of course, the Unsigned Hype Jam thrown by Utmost. So.
Like sands through the hourglass, so are the days of our lives. And for that live moment we thrive, awakening as we make the dead come alive. Rise and walk, my son, come into the light. Inside the dark we illuminate mics, give knowledge to mediocre, the will to Neanderthal, filter to the small, digital to analog. We steady advancing, rhyme enhancing, simple minds can't keep up with this. Yeah, I'ma put it on the table.
Yeah, man, it's interesting that you brought that up, because I was going to ask you about that. Like, what was it about The Cure that made you not only adopt that name but take on the look that you took on? But you've pretty much answered that. And so this Utmost event was from your perspective the coming out party for Mike the Cure persona.
Yeah. And like I said, when you asked me that first question, taking it back to the year 2000 is when I first heard of Slick on the Monkey Bars from Arizona. Freestyle Session 2000 was at the Alexandria Hotel in Los Angeles. And if you've been to that hotel, it's a 2-story venue. It's so huge. It's amazing. There were so many B-boys and B-girls there that night. I mean, it was a pinnacle for hip hop just in general. A huge milestone for Cross One to be able to pull that off. So at that event in particular is when I heard of Slick and the Monkey Bars. I didn't quite know who they were. And then a lot of that jam focused on you hearing that there was a battle going on somewhere. So the whole goal of the jam for us in particular was like trying to find those battles. Downstairs, Slick and the Monkey Bars is battling so-and-so. So we're like, ooh, let's go check it out. So we're running downstairs, trying to sift through all these circles. And I could never quite get a good point of view because these circles were huge and there were so many, it was just walls of people. So I didn't really get to see that battle, but that's when I first heard about them. And then shortly after that, I became acquainted with Paranoid Android. And Paranoid Android was Slick and the Monkey Bars at that time. And we developed a relationship with Paranoid Android. And mind you, I was not Knuckleheads at this time. So we became, I met Knuckleheads in '99, and we became friends from Hope in Hollywood. And that was a Monday practice spot at some church on Gower in LA. And I was in Florgasms at that time, which was a Carson Torrance crew. And we became friends with Knuckleheads, and then we became friends with PA from Slick and the Monkey Bars. And we kind of had this little clique called Dropouts. And that clique is kind of where the abstract style started to have a formation of its own. It started to be a little bit more identifiable because we were a collective and we were expressing ourselves a lot more at events. But Robbie had produced this event, Unsigned Hype, that was going down in 2002, and I was billed with Tim, the serial killer from Florgasms, to do a 2-on-2 exhibition against Bam Tribe. And so Slick and the Monkey Bars contacted us, and it was Nomak and Gio who came down and stayed with myself and Josh and some of the guys and Rancho Cucamonga. And I hadn't met Nomak or Gio before. And obviously they're not going to arrive in their abstract gear, you know? So I wasn't quite sure what Nomak really had in store for that event. And vice versa. He didn't know how I was going to present as well. But then the day of the jam, you know, I'm downstairs getting ready in the bathroom. He's upstairs getting ready in the bathroom. When we see each other, it's like, whoa, you know, it's like we were both running parallel towards the same direction. And his was Nomak based off of the character Nomak from Blade. And I was Robert Smith, you know, and so that's why I heavily contribute, you know, PA, Nomak, Geo, towards really kind of helping California become more acclimated with the abstract style, because prior to that, a lot of what came out of Arizona, people knew as Sour Patch. That was a heavy inspiration for the abstract style. That's why I can't say I originated it, but that event in particular is what really created this waterfall of opportunities for all these people to come out and kind of say, okay, yeah, I'm abstract. Oh, I'm abstract. And I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. So I really attribute it heavily to Utmost for really giving all of us that platform, because without him and his events, you know, I definitely can say I wouldn't be here. Battle Monkeys, Full Force, Lost Tribe, Circus Runaways, Knuckleheads Cali, Knuckleheads Zoo, that entire generation.
Handle that.
Yo, what the dilly? This is Vietnam from Based on a True Story, you know what I'm saying, the video. You know what I mean?
This is Christoph from Full Force Crew. That new video coming out based on a true, what? Based on a Posted Lip story. Alright, based on a Posted Lip true story. It's based on the Posted Lip of the true story of the Posted Lip. Of the Posted Lip. Get that video. You're gonna get that video. Cop that tape, bboy agency. You're gonna get that video. I'm gonna beat it up like an abusive guy. You're a bad girl. You're a freaking bad girl. Posted Lip. Eat my Posted Lip. Bye. I'm gonna beat it up.
You know? Representing California.
California styles, flow rockers, you know what I'm saying? Some of that El Cali style.
Yo, what up? This is B-Boy Sundance Melodrama Crew. Antonio, the Aspen. We got Distinct Link over here. He's not talking. Just want to give a shout out to Utmost, this new video based on a true story. Melodrama Crew representing Arizona. Watch out. Buy it. Buy it.
Hey, Julius, you ready?
What up?
What up, what up?
Lot of monkeys, do not.
Primate, what up?
Yo, we just want to give a shout out to Robbie. Peep out new video.
You know what I'm saying?
You know, it's
Cop that All right,
Yo, what up? Yo, what up, Dudoc? Primate, what up? Yo, Battle Monkeys crew, we want to say what's up to Robbie.
Like
Word up.
what?
Shout out to Robbie. The video,
based on a true story. Representing.
Watch it, peep it, love it.
You know what I'm talking about. You know how we do
video. Yo, you know, do anything.
Battle Monkeys 2003.
Don't bootleg it, all right? Cop it.
Peace.
Like, we all owe it to Robbie. You know, we all owe it to Utmost for really opening those doors. So
to an extent, you guys were born on that day.
Yeah, you know, it's not one person, it's a collective. So I try to always give credit where credit is due, and definitely a lot of it came from that.
Now, if I had to because you touched on the physical, like the physical appearance. If I had to like summarize what you guys were doing in a word, it would be ballsy. Because you guys were kids, and now you gotta remember, breaking, you know, comes from gang culture, right? Fast forward to when the abstract movement comes around, you guys are pushing boundaries with your physical appearances. You guys are pushing like fashion boundaries. You guys have eyeliner and face paint, pushing gender boundaries. Ballsy. What gave you guys the courage to do that as kids in a, I don't want to say hyper masculine, but a very, like, you know, traditional masculine style of dance, and just be like, we don't care, man. I'm Robert Smith and I'm Nomak from Blade. What you gonna do about it?
Well, you know, I can't speak for anybody else, but for me in particular, I think it was, you know, trying to look at it as much in retrospect as possible. And I was thinking about it too, and I was trying to come up with what was my thought process, and what was my my consciousness back then. What was it like? What drove me? And I don't think I really had a conscious point of view back then. I didn't really think about consequence. I didn't ever think about what if, you know. I've always been an edgy kind of person, a troublemaker, a person just basing their life off of mischief way before the dance. So I'm not saying that proudly, but, you know, it's you know, we're all kids at heart, you know, and so we're always going to go against the norm. And I think the difference is I never had a malicious intent. Like, I was never like, screw the system. I was never like, oh, you know, screw foundation and screw this tradition. I never had that kind of conscious approach to it. My approach was always like, I'm just going to do me. You know, I didn't have another b-boy to base it off of. I just based it off of a pop culture character. And so I just did it, and I didn't think twice about it. I just kind of threw it to the wind, and that's been my style ever since, even to this day. I love trying out different things, because I don't ever think about things from only a b-boy perspective. I'm looking at things from a creator, from an artist. I'm looking at things from a filmmaker perspective, from an audience perspective. A lot of what I do for a living plays into that, because I work a lot with senior citizens. So I'm looking at the psyche as well, like how the human mind works, and at least what my perception of that is. And so a lot of that plays into my decision-making factors. So with that, I never really thought about it. You know, I just did it. And, you know, obviously there's going to be people with opinions, and they're either trashing it or they don't support it. But I was always consistent. I was always me. And I always thought that if I give up and I quit this journey, people are right. You know, and what does that make me then? It makes me more confused and more unsure of what I'm doing. And I always felt that if it feels good, and if it feels great, and if I'm exploring things and having all these discoveries, then why? It's not broken. Don't fix it. You know, so that's always been my mentality.
No, and you know what? Like, of the abstract people, you know, and I like to call it rebel style, but, you know, because I just like that word. But anyway, of the people that I've talked to and the stories that I've heard, that perspective that you're telling me now is actually kind of unique. Of just like, I was just trying to basically just being me, trying new things, because I have heard it was you know, screw the system. I have heard that it was, you know, our crew versus everybody. or, you know, a lot of people being shunned by the traditional b-boy style and then kind of hardening because of that and being like, okay, well, I'm just going to go further in what I'm doing then. If you're not going to accept me for what I'm doing, then I'm going to go further into it. And I've even heard that, you know, well, if there's a line, it was described as lines, right? Styles being lines. And if there's the foundational line and there's a million people in that line, why do that when you can do this different thing and create your own line and be in the front of it? You know what I'm saying? So like that perspective that you have is actually unique amongst the perspectives that I've heard.
Yeah.
So.
And I can gather that, and I can see that, and you know, to each his own, obviously. But my understanding of that concept is it's too comparative. So you're basing what you're gonna, instead of it being organic, instead of it being something that's just self-expression from, because how you present yourself as a b-boy or b-girl, I don't think it should come from inspiration when inside the dance. I think the experiences in life and the things that you love, whether it be film, whether it be music, whether it be art, those are the things that should allow you to channel your personality into whatever your chosen craft is. And so my chosen craft was based and is based off of things that have nothing to do with breaking. Obviously, I see things that inspire me, but they inspire me to practice. They don't inspire me to actually present differently. So if I'm going to sit there and say, well, I'm going to do this because somebody tells me that I'm not doing it right, then you're not really doing it for you.
You don't want to be reactionary.
Yeah, you're being reactionary. And so I never looked at it as a anti-war approach. It was always pro-peace. So I've never been a comparative person. Well, I'm going to do this because Ken Swift does that. I'm going to do this because Po One does that. Like, no, you should never be comparative in that sense, because everybody has something to contribute on their own, and everybody's going through their own general struggle. You should never place yourself on a value scale, if that makes sense. So
no doubt. So at this Utmost event that you're telling us about, how old are you at this time?
This was 2002, so shoot, making me do math here, man. I'm not a math please.
Are you
83? Let's see. I was born in 17. Maybe 18, 19.
Okay, so
yeah,
compared to yourself now, you're basically a kid, right? Now, so you're 18, 19 years old, and you would know because you were there. You guys, that movement. And there's a reason it's called a movement. It wasn't just a bunch of abstract kids in California and Arizona. This thing took off, right? I remember being in at the time in Georgia, and we had, and you know, Georgia, the Southeast was very much not an abstract area where we were, you know, but we had that one kid who showed up just looking like Marilyn Manson because of something that happened with you guys. You know what I'm saying? This came from some people he ain't never seen, a place he ain't never been, but you guys had that effect on him. And you had that effect on a whole bunch of people. And you guys are, like you said, you're 19. Some people were younger. Like, how did it feel to have that kind of an influence in the culture at such a young age? Or did you even think of it like that?
I didn't think about it like that because I was still discovering who I was. I was still learning my own voice. And so I don't know, this is just a way I may be looking at it now is for me to be conscious of that back then would require a certain sense of arrogance. And I wasn't a cocky person. I wasn't an arrogant person. I wasn't so confident in my abilities where I could dictate that kind of ownership. So I was just trying to just, you know, progress and be better than myself. My competition was never the person I was battling against. Obviously, like I'm projecting it towards them, but I always wanted to do better than I did the previous event. Like, that was how my focus, always moving forward. Looking at it in retrospect, like in hindsight now, and to see and experience these things and to hear stories from people, like I'm truly flattered. And to this day, like I'm still following breaking and I still break as much because I care about the community and I care about the culture. I'm not in this for myself. I'm in it to give back. And so the youth for me is extremely important to support and to be there as a person to help these people move forward. So for them to, you know, to kind of run with that and build with that, I'm extremely flattered. My only choke point for that is they need to understand and be receptive to the history. And that's where the challenge is, because that's not always the case. Sometimes people will come out and say, well, I made this up and I made that up. And I'm like, well, you need to humble yourself because you didn't, you know. We're not creators here of anything. As Crazy Legs said, you know, not here to support him or his choices, but he said it best, and we're just manifesting at a different time, you know. Everything's kind of been done. It's just about the sequencing of what you're doing now. So as long as you pay respect, you know, I'm extremely flattered.
No doubt. And to use your word choke point, I think one of the things that that I saw like towards, you know, the end of the abstract movement versus you guys who were at the front of it is that once it became not the, you know, the cool way to look different in your scene and get props, and you probably remember when the foam hats came out, boom, they all switched. They went from wearing you know, Deftones t-shirts to now we got the foam hats. You know what I'm saying? Like, so they weren't really in it while for the same reasons you guys were in it. You guys were in it because, like you said, this was me. This is me. This is Mike. This is Mike the Cure.
Yeah.
They were in it because, well, they're getting props doing what they do. I want props, and I want to be contrarian to what's going on in my area, so I'm going to take on that too.
Yeah. It's true. You know, there's a lot of that, but it doesn't just apply towards the, you know, unorthodox or abstract. That happens now. You know, it's the go along to get along mentality. And you'll see that nowadays. People are looking at, well, what are judges looking for? Okay, that's how I'm going to break. You know, so it really hasn't changed at all. You know, it just basically has rotations, you know, and, you know, the unorthodox abstract look may not be hot now. It'll be hot in a couple of years, you know. Everything just kind of goes through its little cycle, and it's just a continuous cycle. So, you know, it's of no consequence to me. I think people are going to do what people are going to do, and if they're going to be about it, then great. But they also have to be mindful that their presentation, you know, people bear witness, you know. So how you present yourself, people are aware, you know. So there was a lot of that back then where people are like, ooh, I'm going to be abstract, and all of a sudden they're Mr. Foundation. And I'm just kind of like, okay, but I don't need to say anything because people see, and people, you know, they're observing that themselves. So it's really about your longevity, and do you care enough about that to be consistent in your dance career? So, you know, it is what it is.
Now, Mike, eventually you went away from not really the rocker look, but like that whole the Robert Smith look, right? Mm-hmm. Was that just you just kind of aged out of it, or like what made you go to the conservative rocker look?
I evolved, you know. I would say once myself and Nomac were doing that in 2002 and a more open platform, more events happened. After I did Unsigned Hype, I went out to Spin Factor 3. Kibla from Ground Effects on the East Coast brought me out, and man, everybody was kind of blown away on the East Coast because they hadn't seen that before either. And the closest thing I guess they had to that abstract was Crackers X, and that's my dude, Crackers X. So when I came out there, people were just like, what the hell am I looking at? You know, and so people weren't hating, you know. It was a huge difference. And you would think otherwise, right? But no, there was a lot of support out there for what I was doing. And that was in early 2003. And then in 2003, Utmost threw an event called Body Language. And at that point, I was kind of getting exhausted because I started to see people kind of picking up on that style, on that that approach, and I felt like it was time to move forward. And so I didn't want to be too stagnant or too complacent in that sense. So I had transitioned kind of out of it. Nomak has started to transition out of it. So Robbie Utmost, he put me in an exhibition battle against Nomak.
Oh yeah. It's heatish, real type of this shit we need it. Yeah. Believe this. It's heatish, real type of this shit we need it. Yeah, I'm super colossal. I DDT any Randy Savage acting macho. Watcho, nostrils burn from the toxic germ when I talk superb. Stronger than Cyclops' optic nerve. You didn't thought so? You just passed the paintbrush to Picasso. I move like a bullet shot from a 50 caliber Glock. So challenge me not, I'm liable to drop flows. And oh, they know my skills. Fire swept through your dialect like the Oakland Hills. And it's smoking still and everlasting. They saying, oh, that's overkill. Chill, roll the field, control the bill. Bixby in me before I blow this building up. Damn, I'm swerving, puffing on a magic wand like I was Merlin. Picture that, beanie look like a magician hat, kicking back with a sack, blowing clouds of urban. Just thinking to myself about linking up my wealth and developing my physical and mental. I make G's with a pencil, expand exponentially. I got to tell them what I've been through. Weed mixed with hash, mixed with heat. Believe this, it's heatish, real type of this we need it. Persian to French, Swedish to Portuguese, words hitting overseas, got to believe it.
I'm an emphatic, rap-vatic, cinematic, syntactics, in havoc when the black magnet attract.
In 2003 at that event, Body Language, and we both presented Out of Character. And much love to Alex Nomak for that battle, because he roasted me and kind of opened up my eyes. But that's kind of that was the catalyst for, I don't want to do this every jam, because I started to feel it less. I started to find my voice. I started to discover my style a little bit more, and I became a little bit more reliant on the storytelling and less on the gimmick of the fashion aspect. And so in 2003, shortly after that event, Robbie threw another event called What Lies Beneath. And that's where Circus Runaways debuted their, abstract, persona. And they exhibition battled against some other crew, I can't remember, but the same jam, Sour Patch exhibition battled Knuckleheads. And then I battled with Bert from Knuckleheads in the 2-on-2s, and we made it to the semifinals. And that served as a catalyst for me getting into Knuckleheads, which is another story. But I think I did it a few times after that, but I think I completely discontinued the abstract look. I would say in 2004, between 2004 and 2005 is when I stopped doing the whole Mike DeCure, Robert Smith presentation, and it just became more about the style and the storytelling and more about focusing on my movement.
For some reason, as you were telling that story about having the battle out of character, for some reason it just reminded me of a Jabberwocky doing a performance with their mask off finally, and you're like, oh, that's who's under there. You know what I'm saying? But so you also bring up another thing. How was it, as you're getting to the tail end of this presentation, to see people like Law coming in full force with the presentation? Like, were you like, oh, okay, I feel you, I remember that energy? Or was it just like, what was it?
Well, there was a lot more depth to it, because I used to be close with Circus Runaways, and that was closer to 2001 to 2003. Myself and Josh were really close with Chris, Law, Josh, Jermaine, all of those guys from Circus, like their first generation guys. And they were Circus, but they weren't Circus at the time. We used to practice a lot with them, and we would go to this club called Gotham in Riverside, 909 area, and we just break there, and so we became close to a certain extent. But then around 2003, after I did the Nomac battle, is we kind of, I guess, had a falling out, and we weren't really that close with him anymore. And then it went from that to a more competitive side, because I had gotten down with Knuckleheads, and then when Knuckleheads and I came together and we started doing a lot more, we became a threat to a lot of people because of the battles and stuff like that. There was these guys who were blowing it up. They're doing this stuff. They're doing crazy stuff. They're unorthodox. They're outside of the box. So we became a threat to a lot of people, Circus included. And so we had a pretty long rivalry with them. But to answer your question, when they came out with that style, I didn't really have too much of an opinion. I was more just a little bit reserved. It just kind of made me not want to, it solidified my approach even more to not present as the Robert Smith character, because I didn't want there to be any confusion. I wanted it to be more, as I was discovering my voice, more about my movement and more about my breaking, than to be kind of associated with that. And I don't say that negatively. I had to evolve. I had to move forward because I felt like people were catching wind of it, catching up, you know? And it's kind of like in breaking, right? If you come up with a move and somebody else comes up with something similar, your job, your duty is to elevate it, right? And to now take a different approach, which is what I did with a lot of my signature moves. I always had to elevate them because people were starting to do them as well. So the same thing is people were starting to do it, you know, shortly around the same time with Circus. Freak Show started to come out more, and I felt like, okay, I got to do something different. So that was really just my focus, really, on that.
Now, and I want to, before I get ahead of myself, I want to throw some names at you, and just see, you know, what comes to your mind. So the first one is Droogie Squad. When you hear Droogie Squad, does that resonate with you at all?
Absolutely. Yeah. Droogies. Yeah, for sure. I mostly remember like Drunk Funk and some of those guys. I don't know a lot of them by name, but, you know, they presented in a very unorthodox manner, much like Sour Patch did. So I definitely attribute a lot of it. The only thing I can say that I just wish that there was more exposure with them. I don't know, maybe that was the mystique. Maybe that was what the selling point was. But I really wish that they got more credit for what they did, much like Sour Patch. A lot of people know more about Sour Patch because Sour Patch did more battles. They were featured in a lot more videos, Mr. Wiggles and his Culture Shock videos and things like that. There was a lot more exposure for them, so that was great. But, you know, not a lot of people know about Droogies. So, yeah, a lot of that style and a lot of that approach, you know, came from Droogies, Sour Patch, Homework especially. Homework was huge. If you watch Freestyle Session 4 and you watch how he's breaking, that same mechanics, Midas also, that same mechanic of dancing is, I mean, everybody's doing that now. It's that, you know, that clockwork mechanical look, you know, that, I mean, that's why I said I didn't create anything. I'm innovating movements, but I'm not creating anything. You got guys like Droogies, you got people like Sour Patch, you got Homework, all these guys who really kind of set that off. So
right. You're jumping ahead on me, Mike. That was my next name, Homework. But just to touch on him, I remember because I had that VHS. He was like one of my favorites. I really liked the way he got down. Not that I wanted to break like that, because it doesn't really fit who I am and my personality and my like life story. But I always appreciated how he got down. I was like, man, this dude is a trip, man. I like this dude. If I ever meet that dude, I'm gonna give him all his props. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So. Okay, so Homework. What about? Let me throw this one at you. Pre-K-Mel reveal.
Pre-K-Mel, I dug him. You know what? And the funny thing is, a little old story is I would always mix up Reveal, Abe, and Vietnam because I never met them in person. Right? I never met them in person, but there was a similarity in their movements back then. If you're watching like Freestyle Session 3, like the Cypher footage, like I'm like, wait a minute, was that Abe or was that Vietnam? Like there was a lot of similarities and I dug it. And here's the thing, and this is something I've been thinking about for a while. People are quick to say, oh, that's abstract or that's abstract. If you really think about it, and let's look at it comparatively, the scene now, Foundation, is so identifiable, it's without a question. You see somebody doing Foundation, it's so, you can pinpoint it, right? Because our dance has been picked apart, above and beyond, and people are fine-tuning every single movement now. So Foundation now, yeah, sure. But if you look back in the days, everybody was abstract. Everybody was abstract. Look at their movements. Look at the way they're doing moves. They're going in, doing a little bit of top rock, they're dropping down and doing a move. You're gonna sit there and tell me that that's a Foundation set? It's not. So everybody was breaking abstract back in the days. Nobody was doing the traditional, as you see it now, the traditional top rock, rocking, and then all of a sudden they hit down to the floor, they do a 6-step, then they do all these other incorporations of traditional movements, end in a chair, doing a W. People didn't break like that back then. You know what I mean? So if you're really thinking about it, like these cats, everybody needs to be careful about how they judge our movement because everybody was abstract when they first started.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
If you look at those old Freestyle Session tapes, a majority of the people are either going to be doing power or, like you said, it's like a little bit up top, get down to the I don't know if you want to call it the meat and potatoes of what I'm trying to present here, but that's kind of what it was.
Absolutely, that's exactly how it was. You didn't waste time doing a 2-minute set. Sometimes, and that's part of the double-edged sword nowadays is it's easy for me to lose interest because there's no mystique anymore. People go out there and they're throwing everything but the kitchen sink, and so you lose interest because you've already shown me everything that you're capable of in one round. So I'm no longer hooked.
Right. And I got what do they call it in when you have a book report, you can read the Cliff Notes. I already read the Cliff Notes. I don't really care about the book now.
Exactly. But back then there was way more excitement towards what we did because A, we weren't overexposed by social media, and B, people they had stuff on reserve, right? You wanted to see somebody get to the finals because you were waiting for those moves you hadn't seen before. People were a little bit more close to the chest in how they danced, and that was more exciting. And that's kind of goes back to the beginning of our conversation where it's a double-edged sword. It's a lot of the exposure is great, but living in our era, man, there was so much to look forward to. And style was way more identifiable because people weren't trying to adhere to these rules that exist now, right? And I think that's just because we've just gotten to a point where we've picked this dance apart so much that now there's this precedent of you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to do this. Back then, it was about who burned who. You know what I mean? So, yeah, man, it just brings a lot of warmth to my heart to think of those times and to be excited. And yeah, like Reveal before K-Mel, I mean, he was dope then. He's dope now. Obviously, he was inspired, but he used it to really fine tune himself. And we all do that. You know what I mean? So I don't think he's any special case. I think, we all do that. We all see other people and they, whether consciously or subconsciously, we're all inspiring each other to some point. you know, and the goal, as long as you're conscious enough to flip it and try to make something different, contribute something different, I think you're not in the wrong here. So
no doubt. And just thinking of that era too is like the idea of what you see now, right? Where people in a battle, they'll throw your move while you're throwing your move. Could you imagine that in the VHS? I wouldn't have even known what your move was going to be. I would have had to wait to see it. Now I've already seen it on YouTube and studied the film. You know what I'm saying? So, I know he's about to do this because I've seen him do it in 5,000 jams on YouTube. You know what I'm saying? But anyway.
And to add to your point really quick is that your movement back then was more protected. You know, biting was a huge no back in the days, you know, and, you know, not a lot of people got away with it, actually. I could equate it to, and this may be extreme, but it's like a celebrity voicing a very left or very right opinion on Twitter, right? You say the wrong thing on Twitter, you're done, right?
Right.
So same thing back then, you know, if you're being perceived as somebody who's ripping moves, your credibility and your respect was out the window. You know what I mean? So to go out there and do somebody else's move, you know, you didn't get away with that a lot, you know, but nowadays, obviously that's significantly different, but yeah.
Now let's walk into the Knuckleheads era.
Okay.
How did you, well, you've already touched on how you became friends with them by going to the practice and kind of linking up with them in that level. When do you cross the line where now it's like, I'm in now? We're just homies practicing to I'm a member of the crew?
Well, when I first saw them in 1999, like much like everybody else, like whether they admit it or not, I was blown away. You know, Knuckleheads Cali, Knuckleheads Vegas, to me, gosh, I love their movement, and I love the fact that they did what they wanted to do. They didn't focus their movement on, well, we want to win battles, so this is how we have to break. You know, and they just express themselves wholly and freely, and I really related to that. And so I'll be honest, you know, I wanted to be a Knuckleheads the moment I saw them getting down, you know, and so I lobbied to get down with that crew for years, you know, and it took me about 4 years to get down with Knuckleheads. And now I wasn't always consciously chasing it, but we were becoming friends, we were becoming closer, and I just knew, like, I want to be Knuckleheads, you know, and I would always joke around, and Millhouse would always say, like, hey, don't be throwing your fist up to your head just yet. You know, like, there's rules here, right? And so, like, I always respected that. But we ended up having a little get-together in Canyon Country, and Millhouse kind of got me drunk. And then we did, like, this 30-minute battle, and it was me and Josh and from Floorgasms. And he ended up tapping out halfway, but I just stayed the course, and that battle nearly killed me. But after that is when they were like, okay, like we think you're in, but you're not fully in yet, you know. And then shortly we did that battle, the 2-on-2 of What Lies Beneath, and then Millhouse and Bert took me up to the Canyon Country Hills, and then they got me down, you know. And you know, it's just been an amazing journey since. But the one thing was that I was the outsider. You know, I was the guy in Knuckleheads who wasn't from Canyon Country. I wasn't from Santa Clarita Valley. And so, and I obviously had a different approach. My shenanigans were out of control. I was a little bit more wild back then, and pretty crazy. And my goal wasn't to make Knuckleheads crazy. My goal was to break all of us out of this shell that was Canyon Country. They were exploring, but I wanted to put us on the map. And in order to do that, I felt like we had to be completely unhinged. We had to just rip those chains off and just throw ourselves to the wind and just see where it goes. And I took a lot of risks that I wasn't necessarily sure on, but it kind of goes back to, if it feels right, it is right, you know? And so I took a lot of risks with the crew. I put us on the map. Not alone. I don't mean that arrogantly, but I was able to put us on the map by taking those chances. And you know, I'm just really grateful that the guys were really open to that, and that they gave me those opportunities, and that they ran with me. You know, because obviously I couldn't do any of this alone. And so, you know, they trusted me with the crew and the name, and I just ran with it, and it just picked up. You know, and like I said, that's a whole nother podcast in itself, of stuff that we did. And a lot of it, you know, contributed to our success. And a lot of it gave us a lot of trials and tribulations because we were doing things that people were maybe not confident enough to do on their own. And, you know, it did trigger our rivalry with Knucklehead Zoo as well. So,
right.
You know,
so
there
how
was a lot
did you,
that came from
not to cut you off, but how did you, like, you telling us it took you 4 years to get into this crew that you were like, yo, I want to be down. So when you go from Knuckleheads to a split with Knuckleheads Cali and now Knuckleheads Zoo, how did you take that?
Well, I mean, when I
upsetting?
first got down, Cali and the Zoo, they weren't one crew.
Okay.
It originated as one crew from Santa Clarita Valley, from Canyon Country. And then Millhouse stayed down with some of the other guys. And then some of the guys moved to Vegas. Long story short, it was still the same home base, if I can say that, with just two different entities running the same, kind of in the same direction. Knucklehead Zoo really picked up a lot of steam. They were making a lot of noise. They were getting a lot of notoriety. And we were still kind of working towards that. But like I said, we came with a lot of shenanigans. And some of our shenanigans were extreme. And so they felt as if that was really hurting their goals for success, because obviously people still to this day don't know the difference between Cali and the Zoo. So they were picking up a lot of what we were doing, you know, and so that caused the rift. They wanted us to change the name, and, you know, Millhouse being one of the founding members wasn't going to change the name. And so that really caused a giant rift between us. I had been friends with some of them, but I wasn't as close as Millhouse was. But I didn't take it so personal in the sense of like I felt betrayed or anything like that, because I hadn't been that close to them. From a competitive standpoint, man, iron shaped iron, iron sharpened iron, you know, like we brought out the best in each other through our developed hate for each other, you know.
No doubt.
It was constantly on edge, constantly on our toes, because we never knew when they were going to see us. They never knew when they were going to see, you know, we just never knew what corner we turned, we would encounter them. So we always had to be ready. So it really brought out the best in all of us. And stuff like this doesn't exist anymore. You don't have beef like that anymore. And, you know, I wouldn't change anything because, you know, we're successful for that reason. And same thing with them. I would hope that they wouldn't change anything because they were able to, you know, learn a lot of things about themselves to better, you know, to reach better progress for their journey. So yeah, I didn't really take it too personally.
One thing that I did think about though, I was looking at like, oh, well, before I even go there, to your point, when you talk about always having to be ready, is like, we don't know when we're going to cross paths, but when we do know that when we do, it's going to be high level competition. So we better be ready. You know what I'm saying? So, but my point was that I was getting to was, I look at Knuckleheads Cali and I look at Knuckleheads Zoo, right? And I compare them. And my question is, does Knuckleheads Cali get to be Knuckleheads Cali if that riff and that split doesn't happen? And what I mean by that is like, you guys are both high level crews, but the way that you guys, like, I see more Knuckleheads Cali as the rockers and Knuckleheads Zoo as like the hip hoppers. I don't know. I mean, like, and maybe I'm saying it wrong, but I don't know if you guys, if Knuckleheads Cali gets to flourish if that break doesn't happen.
I think so, because I think that that's what triggered the beef. Because we were starting to explore a lot of, you know, uncharted territories in our movement. And so at the same time, we were taking a lot of risks. We were breaking differently. We were acting differently. We were wild, man. We were just off the chain. And that noise that we were causing was not aligned with what their goals were. And when you say, you know, they were more, you know, hip hop and, you know, starting to gear more towards that traditional approach, that was intentional, you know, and that comes from my discussions with Ben, is that they were trying to be more successful because they were doing more TV show work. They were trying to get more commercial work. You know, they were looking at it as we're trying to make a living off of this.
Right, they live on the strip, right? They're on the Vegas strip. They're trying to get paid.
Yeah. And when you're trying to make a living off of something, you have to adhere to some type of rule. You have to kind of follow some sense of guideline. Unless you're able to distribute yourself in a sense where you don't need to really follow anybody's rules, you know, then yeah, you have to kind of walk the line. And so what we were doing was challenging that line. And that's where they were kind of like, hey man, you guys are ruffling our feathers a little bit too much. And we never did it intentionally as an act towards them, but that's how the scene received it. You know, like a lot of people would say, like, you know, have this approach where they thought Mike Murda from Knuckleheads Zoo was Mike the Cure. So they'd go up to Mike Murda like, hey, you're Mike the Cure, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, after so long, it becomes too much. I can maybe see that point of view. So that's why it was probably like, hey man, you guys either, you know, you guys are taking this in a direction that we're not really okay with, you know, and our choices, because we were somewhat aligned, our choices, they didn't agree with some of our choices. Like for one, you know, getting me in the crew was already a stretch, but then getting Paranoid Android in the crew was like, all right, you know, you guys are kind of veering a little too far off the course, and you know, we're not really following your guys' rules, you know, so we're kind of doing our own thing, and so that really caused like those creative differences, which is what you'll hear in Hollywood, right, where people part ways because there's two different visions going on. So I think we still would have been successful. I think we still would have been who we are now because that was the path we were already on. It was never a reaction to them.
All right, Mike, let's argue. I know you are a Rocky fan and a Van Damme fan to the 10th power.
Yeah.
Best Rocky movie. I heard you mention 3. Is that your choice?
No.
I'm going 4. Are we fighting or we debating this one, or we in agreement?
Rocky 4 is like basically like one long music video.
No, man, quit hating.
But, okay, so just so you know, Sly is in the studio right now recutting Rocky 4. So we're gonna get a director's cut soon, which is gonna present a little bit more aligned with 1, 2, and 3. So I don't know if that's gonna break your heart or not, but it seems like Rocky 4 is your favorite.
Yes, if he dies, he dies. Hey man, I tell people that in battles, and I don't know if they know. Like when I battle, sometimes I like to get real close to people and say the most randomest thing, so that they're thinking about something else. And I've used that one before. If he dies,
Yeah.
he dies.
Hey,
And they're like, what the hell is this dude talking about?
It's a great tagline. There's something good in every Rocky movie. Maybe not 5 as much, but no, part 1. And here's my argument. I love part 1 and part 2, but I love them as one whole entity. I think part 1 and part 2 are the same movie. And so if I think about it, Rocky 1 and 2 as one movie is my favorite Rocky.
Okay. I don't know, man. Come on now. Ivan? I mean, he even brought his son back to fight.
Well, I mean, it just depends on how you look at it, because those films are a product of their time, right? So like when Rocky 3 came out, Mr. T being so prominent and so heavy because, the A-Team and just his whole presentation was so raw, that Rocky 3 is amazing in its own right. But then when Rocky 4 comes out and you have Ivan Drago, and it's such a strong, dominant villain in not just the Rocky series, but in pop culture in general, right? Like
he's from Russia.
Remember two villains, yeah. Especially with what was going on with the conflict between the United States and Russia.
At the end of the Second World War, the Cold War had begun. The world lay divided between two great superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union. It would not be a conventional war, with the two sides never directly fighting. Instead, it would be an ideological battle between communism and capitalism, the East versus the West, and the resulting struggle for ideological influence and power. Both sides would stockpile nuclear weapons, with questions over how to use, control, and eliminate them becoming central to the conflict. From Stalin to Reagan, from the arms race to the Cuban Missile Crisis, from the Berlin Wall to Vietnam and Korea, this is the story of the Cold War.
It was just so, every film was relevant for its point in time, which I will credit Sly with, because he was engaging his audience in a prime fashion there. So 1, 2, 3, and 4 are amazing. I skip 5 respectfully. 6, Rocky 6 is a great story. I love that one. It gives me the chills every time I watch it. And then Creed was great, and Creed 2, it was all right. So
no doubt, man. You wasn't feeling the street fighting Rocky?
Rocky 5, I just felt like it was a little underwhelming, and it just felt like it wasn't. If you're looking at it from the bigger picture, if all these films as a whole, it's kind of a walking shadow.
No doubt. All right, this one, you're gonna be mad at me. Best Van Damme scene.
Best Van Damme scene?
Yeah, I'm going Breaking 1, Beach Cypher. Of course, that's a joke, but go ahead.
Oh man, you just like the outfit he was wearing. That's all. I don't know, man. You just had to admit, this is like the hardest question you've given me for the entire day, man. It's hard to say. Like, I mean, so many of his films are important to me, because not because of the films in general, but because of the memories I have of my childhood growing up watching them. But I would say, man, Double Impact is probably my favorite in terms of nostalgia. But in terms of like badassery, I would say Hard Target is up there for sure. The John Woo film. I think that came out in '93. So
I'm gonna take the fan favorite. I'm going Bloodsport, Blind Eyes.
Okay.
I'm going there.
That's a good one. No, that's a good one. I think maybe subconsciously I veer away from it because that's the one that everybody knows, and so I'm kind of like, it's kind of like, no offense to anybody who loves Bloodsport, I'm a Van Damme fan, so I like that movie too. But it's like when an artist comes out, when somebody's like, oh, I like this artist, and you're like, oh, what song do you like? And they name the #1 single. It's like, all right.
Like, what's your favorite Wu-Tang song? Cream.
Yeah, right. And it's like, well, there's others.
Right. No
So,
doubt, no doubt.
that's my argument. I'll leave it at that.
No doubt. And the reason I want to get into the movies is, and we'll talk about you in movies soon, but the artist on artist, what's up with that, man? You had your own podcast that you were doing, interviewing some prominent dancers as well.
Gosh, I wish I'm really dying to get back into that. I did maybe 6 or 7 of those, and my goal really was to pay tribute to a lot of people that I grew up watching that inspired me. But my whole emphasis on doing that really is to provide the scene with knowledge and to give people a sense of a history book that more or less doesn't exist. And so I really want people to know our history because it's not documented. We don't have a single source we don't have a Webster. We don't have this encyclopedia of information. We just have the knowledge that is shared and provided. And so, workshops spend too much time focusing on moves when they should be teaching history. How many B-boys and B-girls cannot tell you the history of our movement? How many people don't know who Ken Swift is? How many people don't know who Enemy Squad is? How many people don't know who Storm is? That's not good if you're in the scene and you ask somebody that. If somebody doesn't know who I am, I don't care. I'm not placing myself on that high on the totem pole. But you got to know where things come from, because if I'm sitting there saying, "Oh, I wouldn't," I would try to veer away from that move because K-Mail does that, or Reveal does that, or Remind does that, and they're like, "Who's Remind? Who's K-Mail?" Like, I'm gonna lose my lid that you don't know who that is. Especially if I'm judging an event and people are saying, "How come I lost?" And I'm like, "Well, your style, you're kind of looking a little too similar to so and so, blah blah." And they're like, "Who's that?" And I'm like, "Okay, your job isn't to study other b-boys. Your job is to know your craft, and to know your craft, it falls beyond your movement. It falls into knowing who contributed, knowing who is in the history books. Everybody knows who prominent figures in the United States and world history are. People know who Napoleon is. People know who, Jesse Owens is. People know who these characters are. Why? Because you study history, and because history is important, and it's good to know these things so that these things can live on. These people's contributions can live on. But if people aren't investing in that, like, we're doing our culture, our community, a giant disservice. And that's one of the big reasons why I'm still involved in the scenes, because I want to make sure that it lives on, that somebody is able to carry on this knowledge, given that I either hang up my boots or pass away. I want to make sure that that is still important to people, especially now. It's more prominent now than ever because the B-Boy Olympics is on its way, right? And you're going to have a whole new world opened up where people are going to be learning about us for the first time. And don't we want our history to be intact? Don't we want to basically, cradle our history with care and emphasis and respect and compassion towards the people who have contributed? Or are we just going to say, no, it's just about the moves, it's just about that? Like, we deserve more than that. And that's kind of why I started doing the artist on artist. And that's why, I love talking about our history with people, because for one, I want it to live because I love it, and because it's given me a life that I never dreamed of. And it's done the same thing for every single person who steps onto a dance floor. This dance will always be here for us, and what we're giving to it is minute in comparison to what it's been giving us. I've been able to travel the world for free, and people are blown away when I say that. And it's because I pay respect to promoters, I pay respect to people in general, and so I pay it forward. And so that's how I was able to achieve the things I wanted to achieve, and I think that should be all of our goals, in this dance, not just self-serving. So,
no doubt, it's like, could you imagine a guitarist and not knowing who Jimi Hendrix is or Santana?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Exactly. It would be like, what? Are you serious? You know what I'm saying? So yeah, no. And it's funny that you say that, because our goal is very similar. You know what I'm saying? We wanna be like an encyclopedia of breaking that you can go to, and you can see what was going on at this place at this time through the stories of the people that were there. And then of course we want to also talk about things outside of breaking. You know what I'm saying? Not just what a person does on the dance floor, but what they do in life too, because there's a lot of life stories in this dance as well. You know what I'm saying? So dope. And I was going to ask you how you, you know, about how important journalism like this is, but you pretty much touched on that, because without these stories, then, you know, at some point it's going to get all mixed together and misconstrued, because like you said, we go into the Olympic era, and if there's no access to historical information, then whatever they tell you, that's what the history is. They say, oh, breaking started in France in 2024.
Yeah, and they're gonna run with it because they don't know any better. And you know, just I'll leave it at this. For anybody who considers themselves a b-boy, b-girl, breaker, whatever, unless you have done something in your dance career to give back to your community, you have only gone halfway. You have not gone full circle. Now, you get a choice to pick what your full circle is going to be, and that could be DJing, that could be journalism, that could be your workshops, that could be throwing jams.
Okay, so I here with your brother. Okay, so your opponent is hella hung. How hung are you?
Very hung. Very, very, very hung.
So you have pimp hat. After jam, you go work corner?
What? What was that?
Okay, hi. So I'm here with Kid Rainin. Okay, so how long you been dancing?
You know, I've been dancing for about 15, 16 years, you know. You know, because in the Philippines, we just do our thing, you know what I mean? It's been doing it for a long time and have a good times, you know?
Okay, so how long you in US?
Oh, thank you very much, man. Oh, I'm tired right now. Hold on, let me catch my breath.
Okay, so why you guys battle naked? What if you hurt your child maker?
Child maker's okay, like stone. Kids ain't for me.
So, okay, I here with Mike the Kill, right? The Kill.
That is correct.
Are you sick?
No, I'm pretty healthy, actually.
Okay, so what are you killing?
The world.
And that's one of the things I did, is I threw 6 jams. You know, I threw six jams because I wanted to give something back in a way that I felt like either hadn't been explored, or where I knew that the audience was going to get something out of it. They're going to get their money's worth. They were going to step into an event and realize, wow, I didn't just pay $10 to step into a stinky gym. You know, like I'm paying my hard-earned money to receive a performance, to receive a show, and that's my contribution. You know, and I'm not saying that makes me some, you know, larger than life character, but that's my full circle. You know, I've been able to give back to the culture, and that's important to me. And I could literally hang up my shoes right now and say, you know what, I did everything I wanted to do. You know, but not a lot of people explore those territories. You know, they're more focused, unfortunately, on, well, you know, I want to get paid for this and I want to get paid for that. You know, this dance, I'm sorry, I may ruffle some feathers saying this, but this dance wasn't created to give you financial stability. It was created to give you peace of mind and peace of heart, because you had a means, an avenue of expression, of expressing yourself to escape whatever troubles you're going through in life, right? That's my interpretation of this dance.
Yeah, I mean, the dance was created by kids at block parties that they probably paid $0.25 to get into. They weren't thinking about, like, how am I going to, you know, pay bills and all that. First off, they weren't even old enough to pay bills. The first generation, you know, so these are like 14, 15-year-old kids, you know what I'm saying? So, but no, I totally feel you on that. So, and by the way, if you're watching this and you want to see into the mind of Mike the Cure and some of his wild and crazy thoughts, go look at some of those jams that he threw and see what the vibes were, because you guys are in there. You guys are partying in there. You guys are having a good time. Costumes, crazy battles. Go watch them on YouTube. You'll be highly entertained. But speaking of highly entertained, you also dabble in acting, man. Well, I won't even say dabble. You act. How did you get into that?
Well, you know, dancing was never my first passion. You know, like growing up, just centered around, you know, film. Like I mentioned earlier, the 80s pop culture. Like I just loved movies. I loved movies, you know, and I just loved the art of storytelling. I loved the theatrics. I just was fascinated by film. It just took me, you know. And I always said to myself, gosh, I would love to be an actor one day. And as a kid, that's that's an unattainable goal. You know, like that is not tangible. That is that's a fantasy, you know, like that's just a dream. And so it was always just that, you know, but I still, you know, loved movies and still loved the entertainment. And so I think just one day I was just like, why don't I just try it out? You know, and I was always making like little home movies. I was always like filming little skits with my buddies and stuff like that. And how's that any different than any other aspiring filmmaker on the street trying to make an indie film, right? So I made between 2006 and 2007, I made a full feature length home movie. And it took me years to make, but it's one full feature length film. And it had all my buddies in it, guys from Knuckleheads and stuff like that. And it was like, you know, just a passion film, just made it for the heck of it. You know, I wrote the script as I went along. There's so much continuity errors in it. Anyways, it was just for fun. And after I made that, I thought to myself, like, why don't I just try it out? You know, like, what'll it hurt? And so I signed up with LA Casting, and I just started auditioning. No film school background, no acting background, nothing. I just convinced myself that I'm going to pretend like I know what I'm doing. I'm going to walk in there, just interpret the character, interpret the story, and we'll see what happens. And at that point, this was what, this is some odd years later, maybe 2011, 2012-ish, I would say. I had already built my physicality with dancing. So I knew how to take a fall. I knew how to, you know, do a lot of stunt work. And so I started auditioning for like mercenary roles, you know, fight choreography roles, you know, and things like that. And I just started booking roles. That was it. You know, like I didn't really put anything else into it other than, hey, let's put a foot forward and see if I can get the other one in. And so I just started doing a lot more of that. And I started getting opportunities because of my knowledge of film. I was able to create choreography for some of the short films I did. And so I ended up getting more and more roles as time progressed. And I was mostly playing bad guys because I think those are funner. You get more freedom, right? There's no rules with a bad guy. You can kind of do whatever you want to do, and it's acceptable because he's the villain. But as a baby face, it's harder for me because my look, I don't look like a nice guy. But yeah, I just kind of just started doing that, and I started booking roles. And you know, I towards the end of my film career, I started. I was gonna get an agent, but then I didn't like the way that I was being billed, or the roles that I was being offered. It really wasn't me, so I just remained. I was SAG, but then I was remaining preferable on non-union work because I was able to have a little bit more creative input. And so I just had a lot of fun. I did it. I was able to, you know, be on the big screen. My family was able to see me on the big screen in theaters, and that was it. You know, I've never been the type of guy who's always like, oh, that's not good enough. Obviously, I always wanted, you know, to keep exploring, but, you know, the career I had in film, I'm pretty content with. You know, I was able to do commercials. I was able to do short films, indie films, full feature length films, and, you know,
get nominated for awards.
Yeah, I got some awards. I did I wrote, starred, produced, directed a short film in 2019, end of 2019. We had a nice film festival circuit run, and we got some awards for that, and I choreographed a fighting for that too. I'm really proud of that film. It's called Like Wolves.
How'd you find me?
You always said there was no place like home.
You here to take me in?
I'm not here for you.
Was it you?
Come on, Lou. You know we don't kiss and tell. Would you believe me if I said it wasn't?
Maybe, if I never met you before.
Come on, Lou. That hurts.
You're wasting your time. He's not here.
Obviously. but you're gonna take me to him. Mind you, I am here as a courtesy.
Oh, is that what this is?
That's exactly what this is. If I leave, others will come.
I know how a contract works.
Of course you do. So, if I can't have the kid, well. You broke the rules, Lou. Examples have to be made. You can save us both the time and just take me to him. You see, while you look down at your feet and you contemplate your next move, I want you to think real hard about what you've done. Good or bad, it doesn't matter. Every action has its consequence. Yasmin knew it.
You don't get to say her name.
And because of your actions, she faced the consequence. You see, our fates, they're sealed in blood. You knew that the moment you took your first hit. But her? Call it salt in the wound, but the reason why you are standing here and she is not is entirely because of a choice you made.
And you can find that on YouTube as well. If I have an opportunity to do another one, I would love to, but I'm not dying to. It was fun. And all of that became tangible once dancing gave me my voice. Once breaking gave me that confidence to be in front of a crowd, to be in front of a live, breathing audience, acting really was nothing. Most actors nowadays, maybe they won't tell you this, but they're all struggling to find authenticity. And most of them don't know what the hell they're doing. They're struggling just like the next person right there. So nothing really makes you any different. As long as you're able to treat the craft with authenticity and respect, you can be as good as the next guy. It's just a matter of how much you believe in yourself and how much you believe in your product. So
no doubt. And there's one last thing I want to talk to you about. You touched on it a little bit. You mentioned it when you were talking about your family got to see you on the big screen. Now, for those guys who don't know, Mike, he is a father, husband, family man. How has fatherhood matured you? Now we're just talking man stuff at this point. How's it matured you as an adult having a kid?
I just had a talk with my wife. I don't know if it was yesterday, the day before, and I won't be too specific because I don't want to offend anybody, but and I was having a talk and I was referring to somebody in particular, and I just think, becoming a father, I think it's one of the only things that could really allow you to become truly selfless, to really, because without being responsible for another human life, we're just living our own, and this is just my point of view, is that, I'm trying to achieve X, Y, Z and do this and do that. And I was very blessed, thank you God, for everything that you've given me. I was able, to be blessed to do everything I wanted to do. I'm not greedy in that sense. I was able to explore film and cinema in the way that I dreamed as a child. I was able to travel the world and compete as Mike DeCure for, I started dancing in 97. So 20 something years I've been able to explore my dance without any major injuries, knock on wood. I've been able to throw 6 jams. I've written scripts. Like, I've done everything that I've really wanted to do creatively, for the most part. And I'm pretty satisfied with that. And I'm pretty grateful for that. And so when I became a father, I never felt conflicted in that sense. And I know a lot of people go through that. They experience that, well, I'm a dad now and I can't do this and I can't do that and that sucks and blah, blah, blah. And now this is challenged and that's challenged. I don't really feel that. I am 150% proud to be my son's father. And I'm so happy to have a super healthy child right now, and especially in this time, in this day and age. And it's just changed my perspective in terms of what my purpose is. All these things that I can say that I've achieved, nothing is as important as being a father to my son. Like, especially the way I grew up in a broken home. I grew up with a very challenged, my mom is an amazing woman, but I had a very challenging father, and who's not really with us anymore. He's alive, but he's not with us anymore. And I never received the support of a father in the sense that you would hope. There is no picture perfect family, but the things that I wanted as a child from my dad, I never received. And so that always fueled me as a dancer and as a filmmaker to make something of myself, to be more than the lack of praise that I received. And now having a son, it gives me an opportunity to relive my childhood. I'm not doing it for me. I'm obviously doing it for him, but it allows me to feel a lot of the things I never got to feel. It allows me to experience a lot of things I didn't get to experience. And just, my son's not even 2 years old, and just the experiences I've had of showing him the world and showing him life, like nothing beats that, man. Like nothing. And I couldn't be more proud.
No doubt. And it's funny that you say that, because in my mind, in my opinion, as amazing as, life experiences are, they're just that more amazing when you provide them for someone else and you get to watch them experience it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, no doubt. Well, there it is. Mike the Cure, Knuckleheads Cali, episode 17, Pictures of You. Thank you so much for your time, man. We really appreciate you, sharing your stories and becoming part of this one big story that is breaking Beyond the Cypher, and everything with our channel. Hopefully in the future, man, we can do some more things together. I got some ideas for some projects that I think that you would definitely fit right in with as far as being a part of, man. And yeah, man, just thanks so much.
Hey, it's my pleasure, and I want to thank you also. I'm just one person, but seeing you doing this for the community, I think it's important. I think it's great what you're doing, and I know you just had Eric on, right? And I think it's nice that you're doing this for the community and for the culture, because I mean, at the end of the day, somebody's got to do it, and you're stepping up and you're doing it and you're providing that. I think it's great, and I'm excited to see you create more projects and do more things. And if there's anything I can do to be supportive of that, you have my full support. And again, man, thank you for the opportunity to share my history and share my culture with the audience. So looking forward to seeing what else you do, man.
No doubt, man. Peace.
Much love, man. So earlier I mentioned Slick on the Monkey Bars being a pretty notable influence in the abstract movement. And I hadn't seen them, as I mentioned earlier, until Freestyle Session 2000. And I told a little story earlier about how I wasn't able to actually see the the call out battle that was happening. But after that point at Freestyle Session, Slick and the Monkey Bars became a little bit more notable because they were making a lot of noise in Arizona. So my experiences hadn't been really opened up to Arizona until a little bit later on in the 2003, 2004 era. So Slick and the Monkey Bars, I don't want to leave any of those guys out, but you had guys like Nomac, you had guys like Geo, Nate the Killer Robot, and there's quite a few other guys, and I'm not privy to their names, unfortunately, but they, alongside other dancers in Arizona, they had a movement of their own. And much of my experiences were kind of relegated to Southern California until I really got a chance to explore the movement in Arizona later on. So I really can't note the wave of change that came without mentioning Slick and the Monkey Bars and their contributions. As I said earlier, they started making a lot more noise with events out there, and a lot of it came from Nate the Killer Robot. I can't leave that guy out. He produced a lot of events out there in Arizona that gave a platform for a lot of dancers to express themselves on that medium. And he gave me some opportunities as well. And it was at an event or a location called Scrappy's. And any Arizona b-boy, they'll know Scrappy's, and they'll know that Scrappy's served as like a major platform for these dancers to really express themselves. I did an exhibition battle there. I've judged an event there. I know Paranoid Android, who was also Slick and the Monkey Bars. He had some really notable events there. Melodrama even had some great competitions there. So Circus and Freak Show eventually started to get some exposure out there. You all right, dude? So, Scrappy's really served as like a really big platform for a lot of us. And I can't mention, these events without giving love to Nate and Scrappy's, as well as Robbie, for opening that platform. So I didn't want to leave those guys out. Just to kind of summarize, this whole abstract movement or unorthodox movement is, again, this is just my opinion. These are my experiences. This is what my experience in the Southern California scene since 1999 has taught me, is that a lot of the ways that dancers express themselves, I mentioned earlier, were kind of abstract in themselves. We didn't have the hardcore focus on foundation back then that we do today. Mind you, a lot of dancers were, foundation based, and nobody had forgotten about the elements of that foundation. But the battle aspect was a little bit more move for move, pound for pound, burn for burn. And, if you really want to, get technical, that can be considered abstract. That can be considered unorthodox, because you're skipping a lot of those parts that people consider foundation, right? Your basic top rock, your basic footwork. People were skipping that if you're doing burn for burn. You're going down and you're dropping into a move. So how is that any different than a b-boy or b-girl who, mind you, is, presenting themselves fashionably different, but they're doing the same concept. They're going in and they're dropping down into, a move or a burn or whatever, what have you. So, that is my argument, is that, it's subjective. It's like art. So I don't really like to put a label on it as abstract or foundational or whatever. We're all just dancers expressing ourselves, but that's what my experiences has taught me. In regards to the, historical chronological order of things, these are just based off of my experiences. So, there's going to be a lot of other opinions out there. There's going to be a lot of other people with different perspectives, different experiences that, may differ from mine. I'm not here to put anybody down or say anybody's right or wrong, but my experiences have, shown me the natural progress in our movement from, coming in and seeing a lot of these universal moves, and then having that desire to flip the script and do things a little bit differently. So in my time, a lot of that started with Robbie's event, Unsigned Hype, in 2002. And after that, it just became an umbrella of movement for promoters, like I said, like Nate the Killer Robot doing, the lesson events at Scrappy's. You had Maximum Styles from Melodrama Crew doing all those underdog events. So it really opened the doors for a lot of all these other dancers who consider themselves unorthodox or abstract or whatever, to really express themselves. So, like I said, everybody's going to have a varying opinion. You're not right. You're not wrong. These are just my opinions. These are just my experiences. And, you know, I try to do my best to pay respect to that. So a lot of it for me, personal inspirations when it comes to that movement. You know, Nomak is, I got a lot of respect for Nomak. I got a lot of respect, incredible respect for Paranoid Android, who was a rival of mine for years. And we were running parallel for quite a while, you know, and he really, really paved the way for a lot of people to experiment in that same sandbox. So big ups to him. Homework as well was a big inspiration for me. Before I even kind of knew what unorthodox movement was, Cujo was massive for me. B-boy Cujo was just crazy because he was testing the boundaries of everything that we knew as a grounded sense of b-boying. He was just testing gravity on a whole new level. And then, you know, people get surprised when I say you got cats like Wicked, you got cats like Rock's Right. Those are major inspirations for me because it's not necessarily well, they're not abstract. Well, no, they're not, you know, but for me, it's not about abstract, quote unquote. It's about the formula. It's about the story you're trying to tell. And the way that those guys piece together their moves and express themselves, that's where the inspiration comes from. Because you can have the, you know, most flexible, crazy, unorthodox person, but if they don't know how to tell their story, that doesn't really serve as a means for inspiration. So again, going back to, you know, these innovators per se, you know, it's going to differ for everybody. Everybody's going to have a differentiating opinion. So I really want to pay respect to that. I don't want to sit there and say anybody's right or wrong. So I hope that provides a little bit more clarity on that. And not trying to ruffle anybody's feathers, but if I do, hey, it is what it is. So